only went on Amazon to fill up my basket when I felt isolated, when I hadn't had time
Mm.
with my partner or with my friends. That's when I would do it. And I
Yeah,
realized
yeah,
every
yeah.
time I had quality time with her or with friends, I had
Doesn't
no
it goes
need. I
away.
would never go on Amazon and fill up my
Yeah, yeah.
basket. And you're right, it comes back to this. We're told that, oh, you should be individual, right? And we should be able to cope with
Mhm.
everything on our own. And I shouldn't have these needs. They might not be perceived as valid, right? Even though, of course, all needs are valid. They're literally this incredible organism's way of just
Right.
communicating. How can you stay in balance? How can you continue to be nurtured? Not just logical, which you say is obviously the food, water, shelter, right?
Mhm.
But also there's emotional needs, right? There's physical needs, which also are
Right.
absolutely critical for this body to stay in good function.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, and I it's funny because what you were saying about it's not good for capitalism for us to be well connected, right?
Mhm.
It's not
Yes.
because we'll buy more, and that's such an interesting additive,
Mm.
especially to the narrative of American culture.
Yes.
And it's bleeding effect. It's bleeding over effect into other countries of watching how we do this, how we, you know, it's funny. Like I go and fill my Amazon cart, and it made me go, "Oh, right, the cart you can't fill,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's a bottomless cart."
Yes.
It's not like going to the grocery store and like you literally have a cart and you're like, you know what, that's getting a little full, and
Yeah.
maybe not to buy anymore. It's a bottomless cart, right? And that's what this is. It's when we are what we're naming here is when we don't know those needs, we
Mhm.
start reaching to other things to try to fill them.
Yes.
And Amazon is one way we all do that. And it's a bottomless, right? It's there's no way to fill that part
Yes.
of us. And as we're talking about this, it's just, it's not lost on me that how are we ever going to be able to, I want to come back to that question, why don't we tell our needs?
Yes.
But then the question is, how are we going to be able to speak our needs when we don't even know we have them?
Yes.
Right. And going back to the touch thing, I want to make it really clear, right? What I mean is non-sexual touch,
Mhm.
right? Physical, non-sexual touch.
Yes.
Because the one thing I do believe that men have been offered is sex is a need,
Mhm.
right? But they've also been told to meet all their other needs through sex,
Yes.
right? So what we would say is that men have sexualized the culture of men as just these, you know, caveman-like sex beings. The
Yes.
cultural narrative around men has taught them to sexualize non-sexual needs.
Yes.
And this is something I have to work with really, really explicitly in my work with couples because th- if men get a promotion, they want to celebrate with sex.
Yes.
And if they lose a job, they want comforting, but they want you to comfort them through sex. Like
Yes.
it doesn't matter if I'm happy or sad, right?
Yes.
We can manage that
Yes.
through a sexual encounter.
Yes.
Right? And that's kind of what we're given as a tool to manage all of our needs. And so when you have a lot of couples come in and the man just goes like, oh, he just only wants sex all the time. It's like, well, he's got a lot of needs that he doesn't know about,
Yes.
but
And
he's been given one tool.
yes, I really like that. And that again brings us back to this culture where it's often not acceptable for most men, at least, to ask or get touch, right? And we learn that
Yeah.
quite early, which again brings us back to this that
Oh man.
actually sex is often for many men the only place they get physical
That's
touch,
right.
right? So no
That's right.
wonder that there might be an obsession about it, right? Because that's the only place.
The only
And
place.
the fascinating thing for me, and this is many years ago, but I remember when I decided to start hugging my male friends instead of, shaking hands or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah, yeah.
men tend to do. Hey, bro, whatever they're
Yeah,
doing,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
To actually give them a proper hug.
yeah.
And then a few of my friends got comfortable with it. And sometimes we would actually just hold each other for
Oh
like a
man, that's so
proper 30-second hug, right? And get all those good chemicals in the brain, right? And just breathe. You can feel the breath. And so many of us would feel so awkward because we grown up with men don't do that and what
that's
that
right.
means about us if we do it, right? Etc. Etc. But an interesting fact was it actually changed also how I related to sexuality, because suddenly there was a totally different calm in my body around this. And it
Yeah.
wasn't such an urgency because I could now get touch from many different places. And suddenly the
Right.
body felt more calm, right? So it's just very fascinating. But I think what you're saying is, which is really important to look at, it's so hard for many of us to even sense what are these needs.
Well, it's the unconscious of it, right? And you were naming a minute ago how, as I'm really appreciating the way that you were saying, when we don't have another form of touch besides sex,
Yes.
it becomes, well, it becomes so important,
Yeah.
right? It becomes so important. So when you take that away, it goes, that's all of my physical touch,
Yes.
right? So there's many men who walk around this way, and I know we talk a lot about men on this podcast, but that's often because that's the perspective that we have, and so we will want to, as this podcast continues to go, we'll get some, uh, we'll be bringing in some females, so we have more female perspective at times, and,
Yeah.
and non-binary guests to come in and
Mm.
chat about that perspective as well. But just there's something I do like about this, about our this focus though, is because there's not very many men out there talking about couples
Yes.
work
Yeah.
and how to help couples. So there's not a lot of male perspective out there
Yes.
that's that's um that's coming from this realm of, we have a lot of needs that we don't know. And
Yes.
so, I wanted to name that because anyone listening is going, "These guys talking about men and their, and that, like how compassionate they are towards men, but it's the women that have to put up with them, and we get that." Right? I don't want to shy away from the fact that we totally understand there's women, out there that are going, "Wait a minute," but they're assholes. I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. I get it." No, that's not lost on us. But what we also want to do is build into that kind of awareness for men and for their partners, right? That when you take away sex and a man doesn't have an awareness of their other needs, then you've taken away the one tool they have to meet those needs. And so it does become really important. But that is on men to know and to learn their other needs, right?
Yes.
It is on them to do that.
Yes. And I think even when we obviously are talking about this topic of sex, is that for a lot of men, it also is a stress release, right? It becomes a way they engage with stress because they might not have other coping strategies really of how they know how to engage when they're very stressed, right? Um,
Mhm.
and often sex then become this release where they try and regulate their mood or their stress response through that, right? Um, and again, this is not to say there's anything wrong with sex at all. Of course, there not. It can be a wonderful, beautiful part of any relationship, but it's
And
just
it can be a wonderful stress reliever,
yes, and it can be that too.
only stress reliever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then it's also to again then look at, like you said, what are those other needs that might
That's right.
also be there, right? Because if we
So,
don't
so let me
listen to them, that yeah, because otherwise there's
ask,
something they keep lying there that is not being met,
yeah,
right? And it might be
right.
covered up, but it's not being met. And in that is also part of what we say, in this word relating. And often we don't even talk, what does relating mean? Yes, it's partly you share experiences together, you share goals together, etc.
Right.
But it's also understanding your partner's internal world, right?